Okay, these are my immediate thoughts on the conversation between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson that just came out yesterday. As usual, I get the feeling that the answers to the deepest questions are somewhere in the convergence between Peterson and Harris. I'm not saying those are the only two people on the planet that can bring us there, but I'm saying that they are two people that I'm aware of that are on the right track, and I think both of them combined is where we need to go. I think if you're trying to prioritize your attention, if you're trying to figure out where should I put my attention in order to find the answers to the biggest questions of the universe, the conversation between these two men is probably where you should put that attention. That's what I think. That's always the feeling I get when I listen to these two talk. It's the feeling I get when I listen to them talk by themselves, to an audience or to other people. I've been listening to both of them for a very long time. Peterson for a much shorter time, I guess, but these deep questions. Why? What is the meaning of life? Why does the human brain do what it does? They're both thinking about neuroscience quite a bit, psychology quite a bit, but it's the deepest questions of neuroscience, which is, how does the human brain work? How does the human brain work? Their conversation went all right. It was the first time they've talked in a few years. They got to a very interesting place towards the end, but then they ended up ending it. They did say they'll talk again, and I do look forward to them talking again. I hope they talk very soon, because they were getting closer to it. They're always getting closer to it. I think the answer's, it's still out of our reach. It's probably decades and decades away, but I do get the feeling that we are going to figure out the answer. We are going to. And the answer is going to come from somewhere in the intellectual space that is currently being plowed forward by people like Harris and Peterson. They're kind of trailblazing ahead in a way. Maybe not doing the research themselves, but as podcasters and public speakers, they are sort of collecting the knowledge and communicating it to people like me. So I'm not saying that they are themselves the trailblazers, but they represent the trailblazing to me. They're sort of ideologically representative, and I see both of them as sets of ideas that are partially theirs and partially collectives around them, right? Like Peterson represents a group of people, Harris represents a group of people. These two groups combined are where we need to go. For a lot of reasons. First of all, if we can understand us, then maybe we can understand how to build a better world, a better society. A large part of the problem with running a society is that it's filled up with humans, and if we don't even understand how we work as individuals, there's no way we can understand how we work as a collective. And when it comes to these conversations, in the past, Harris and Peterson have gotten stuck on things that are so fundamental that it felt like they weren't going anywhere. But in this past 2 hours, it felt like they actually moved past their original debate, which is what is true and what is not true. They got stuck on is ought for about 30 minutes, trying to figure out. I mean, it's a classic question. How do you derive what is? I mean, how do you derive what ought to be from what is? How do you get from an is to a should? It's kind of like one of those old philosophical questions, and they spent some time talking about it. And they never really, Peterson's contention here is that we perceive the world through an existing structure of values, and there's no other way to perceive it. So the act of perception requires a value set to begin with. And Peterson has been analyzing a lot of the past culture, a lot of tradition that's been building up for, who knows, thousands and thousands of years, and trying to figure out, because I think he's right about this, is that these ancient traditions, these traditions that have been passed down, have a lot to do with understanding us. I mean, a lot of it is rules, a lot of it is guides for behavior, but it's built around, fundamentally, an understanding of us. That's why his reading of the Bible, his lecture series titled The Psychological Significance of the Biblical Stories, is really about analyzing the Bible as a way of analyzing human minds, right? Like Genesis, from a Petersonian perspective, is really about neuroscience in a way. And this is, Harris has been arguing with Christians since the 2000s, at least, probably going back to the 90s. And Harris just wants to throw it all out. And that has been kind of a big disagreement between the two of them. And I think in this recent conversation, they finally came to some common ground on that, because they finally just got past that. Nobody really, I don't care about proving or disproving God, right? That doesn't matter to me. What matters is understanding me, myself, understanding my own brain. And well, these two guys, they're close to it. They're close to understanding us, or they're closer than anybody else that I've heard. When they talk, I am absorbed. And there are moments in their conversations where I have almost, they talk about psychedelics quite a bit, funny enough, but I have epiphanies listening to them. I have like semi-psychedelic experiences where something will hit me just for a second. And I go, okay, yes, that is... I don't know what it is. They're trailblazers, and I feel like I'm following in the path, and I love it. I love listening to them talk. I can't wait for them to talk again. Because what am I talking about with this video? What am I talking about right now? I don't know if people listening to this video right now understand what these two guys are about. It seems like both of them are trying to get to, a lot of this really is about the meaning of life, really. What is the meaning? Why? Why do I do anything every day, right? When I wake up and do things, why am I doing those things? What's the meaning? What's the purpose? And Peterson has been saying for a long time that you cannot propositionalize it, and that you get to it by behavior. So religious traditions have been trying to develop an understanding of meaning in a non-propositional way. So you go and you attend church every single week, and then you do prayers, or you do some sort of organized singing, or listen to a guy up front. You stand in a structure that has certain symbolic meaning, and it's supposed to get you into a headspace where you can get closer to an understanding of meaning. And Harris has been approaching this from the perspective of just meditating, right? If you just sit still. He makes an interesting point that if you want to inflict suffering upon yourself, upon anybody really, all you have to do is sit still. Just sit down where you are right now. Do not move, and eventually you will suffer. It causes suffering, right? And so, which is a strange thought. It's a strange thought. He makes this point in their conversation that you could pick out the comfiest chair in your entire house, and you can sit there for an hour, and you eventually will become uncomfortable. And that's because I think he's trying to understand the human mind, but also there's an overlap between the meditative process that Harris describes, especially if you follow his course, the Waking Up course, and sort of the prayer rituals that happen in a church or something like that, right? But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. And I think Peterson's the only one that really seems to understand that, in my opinion. I mean, I used to be 100% on board with everything Harris said until I started listening to Peterson. And now I see, I was completely on the Harris track. Peterson pulled me off of it, and now I'm somewhere in the middle of the two of them, and I see them converging. And I think the convergence of both of them is really, really that's kind of where the singularity lies. That's where if once they get to the end of their conversation, we have AI pretty much at the end of it, right? Because once we understand us, we can rebuild us. I would love to see, Peterson's talked to neuroscientists before. He's talked to Ian McGilchrist a few times, which are probably some of my favorite conversations. He needs to talk to Jeff Hawkins. I would love for him to talk to Jeff Hawkins. Hawkins has gone on the Lex Friedman podcast a few times, and Friedman's all about AI and technology. And I think Friedman's also headed in the same direction, but he's not nearly at the level of Harris or Peterson here. But once their conversation is over between these two guys, we'll be able to build artificial intelligence. That's the end of their conversation. I think that's why I'm so focused on it. That's why it's so exciting to me. The understanding of me, of myself, is inseparable from the understanding of artificial intelligence, I think. I believe intelligence is substrate independent. I think consciousness is also substrate independent. Consciousness and intelligence are two different things, but they're both independent of the substrate that they're built on. So I could rebuild myself. I could rebuild a human or a conscious being or an intelligent being on a different substrate, like silicon chips or something, or in a simulated environment. But the problem is that well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, because I think they don't know what they're talking about. It's a very vague subject, but to me, that's where the future lies. That's where the most exciting future lies. And, we're talking about current society and understanding ourselves, and you're talking about the world and trying to create a better world. And how do you create a better society if you don't understand humans? We don't even understand how our own brains work. So how can we understand how to build a society? And again, a lot of what Peterson talks about is how a lot of human cultures have been wrestling with this question since the beginning of humans. And they have been setting up social structures that it has the answers built in an inarticulate, non-propositionalized way. Like, they're headed towards the answer, and they build structures that sort of have the answer somewhere inside of it, but they don't have it written down explicitly, because nobody has ever in the human history been able to write down what the meaning of life is. And the meaning of life is inseparable from how to set up a society. Like, the US government has to have some sort of built-in understanding of how the human brain works, right? If you're going to build a structure of humans, you need to have some sort of model of how a human brain works. So every structure of humans that has ever existed had some kind of model of how the brain works. And today we have science, and we have this rational thinking, and we have this new toolkit, the scientific toolkit, to attack it from a new angle. But like Peterson keeps saying, we also have tens of thousands of years of tradition set up where it's the same exact question that the scientists are trying to answer, which is, how does the brain work? But it's been answered through a different method. And there's a plane flying overhead in a second here. I mean, this is stuff that's way beyond me, obviously. It's way beyond any of us. And I actually think that this ideological culture war that's going on right now is about the same question, right? It's like, why, people are looking at humans as they currently are, as they have been. We're looking at the collection of human brains across society, and we're saying, why are they set up the way they're set up? And for some people, the answer is that it's power. It's groups of people trying to maintain power. So it's like white men are trying to. The reason society is set up currently, the way it is currently, is to. There's a lot of answers to these questions, really. And I think the best answer is the one that comes out of Peterson-Harris combo, really. And once we get that answer, we'll have AI, and we'll have the ability to model human brains accurately enough that hopefully we can set up a society that's actually a good society, right? And then that's where this is why this stuff gets so deep. That's why this stuff is so contentious. That's why Jordan Peterson is such a contentious figure. It's funny that Harris is not as contentious, even though both of them actually agree completely on all of the woke stuff. Like, every single stance that Peterson has gotten in trouble on when it comes to woke ideology, is exactly what Sam Harris would take as well. Harris has taken the same stance on transgenders, the same stance on everything that Peterson has made stances about. But Harris doesn't get in trouble because Harris does a better job of, well, I don't know why Harris. Probably because it is strange to me why Harris has not gotten in trouble with the woke while Peterson has. Probably because Peterson's coming at it from a more conservative perspective. He's trying to look back at social behavior, social institutions, and say, hey, maybe these existed for a good reason. You know, that's why I'm talking about on this channel. We have all these social norms, social rules that we seem to be ditching because we're just saying, all of that was barbaric. But Peterson is saying, no, these guys have been wrestling with the same questions we're currently wrestling with, and their answers might, you know, it's a Chesterton's fence kind of scenario, but it's like, we need to understand what they are before we get rid of them. And Harris is like, hey, let's all just meditate deeply. And once we understand that the concept of self is really not, the self is an illusion, right? So, but the problem is that nobody's going to do that. We're not going to get there. And even if you try to get there, even if we did try to get everybody there, it's an impossible goal. You can't, no matter what you do, you're constantly pulled away by a stream of thought that creates an identity. There's no way to not identify with your thoughts, right? You are your thoughts. But that experience, you have to listen to Harris's take on free will. I don't know ever how to explain this without talking about that. I've put links to that video before. I don't know if anybody cares, but there is a, you know, they talk about this quite a bit in their recent episode about how there's nothing you can do to not identify as your thoughts. And the act of your brain automatically creates an identity for you. But you really aren't that identity. You really don't even exist. Really, on some level. Like, what is a you? What is a me? You know? I'm just... This is so hard for me to talk about this stuff. I should have collected my thoughts. I'll probably do another run at this. I gotta listen to their conversation again. The default mode network was another thing they talked about for a while, and how... See, Peterson's always trying to take these concepts that the neuroscientists are talking about and sort of pull them out into a kind of cultural, religious sort of understanding, and how, you know, Harris will say that, oh, human beings are aware so that we can figure out how to navigate the world, and we conceptualize objects a certain way so that, you know, he comes at it from an extremely rational... He doesn't really say a whole lot. Sam Harris does not make a whole lot of claims, honestly. He has very few things that he believes, like, very... Alright, I gotta end this video. Today's February 8th, 2022. Happy Tuesday. Bye.